Okay, so question number 1 is really question number 6. Consider the function which is log base e of x plus 2 restricted domain. Initially we're looking for f of negative 1. So f of negative 1 will be log base e of negative 1 plus 2, which is log base e of 1, and the power that you raise e2 to get 1 is equal to 0. So f of negative 1 equals 0 is the answer to part A. Part B asks us to sketch. Well, we've got a restricted domain, and this tells me the endpoint is at negative 1, 0. So part A gave me my x-intercept. If I'm looking for the y-intercept, log base e of 0 plus 2 is log base e of 2. Now log base e of 2.7 would equal 1. Therefore, log base e of 2 is less than 1, somewhere around about there. So I'm drawing this graph, drawing it something like that, where that's log base e of 2, that's equal to negative 1. That's my endpoint. There's my graph. Part C asks for the smallest possible value of d such that fog exists. So for fog to exist, the range of G has to be a subset of the domain of F. And I know my domain of F is negative 1 to infinity. G is a parabola. It goes to a negative 17 and looks like this. So it has a range which is negative 17 to infinity. So I've got a problem. And my problem is negative 17. That's my problem. The negative 17, I would prefer to be negative 1. So it's asking for what would be the domain of this so that its range was negative 1 to infinity. Remembering that for fog, it goes through g of x first, and what comes out of g of x then goes through f of x. So what goes into g of x, which is my d to infinity, what comes out then goes in through f of x, which is negative 1 to infinity, and then what comes out of that will be 0 to infinity. So what am I going to make my d value so that this becomes negative 1 to infinity, not negative 17 to infinity? So let's look at this graph. I wish to have it from negative 1 and higher. So negative 1 equals x squared plus minus 17, 16 equals x squared equals plus or minus 4. So that value there is negative 4, that value there is 4. And since this is going from d to infinity, it's this right-hand side over here. Therefore, to get negative 1, that's got to be 4 to infinity. Therefore, d equals 4. If d equals 4, then my range is negative 1 to infinity, and negative 1 to infinity becomes the maximal domain that goes into f of x. Therefore, this 0 to infinity will become the range of fog, because the range of fog will be the range of f if the maximum domain of negative 1 to infinity goes into f. Because there's no difference at this end, because what's coming out of here is exactly the same as what's going in through here. And in part D, remembering I now need f of h of x, where h of x equals x squared, and it has a domain of all real numbers. And since it's a parabola like this, it has a range of 0 to infinity. So it goes through h of x first, and then it goes to f of x second. F of x is my log base e of x plus 2. So what I know is that I know what's going in through here will be all real numbers. And what's going to come out through here is 0 to infinity. So the only things that are going to go in through here are 0 to infinity, because the range of h will become the domain of f. So if I now only have 0 to infinity, not -1 to infinity, then my range won't be as great because my domain isn't as great. And if I come back here to this graph and I was to restrict this and only start it from 0 to infinity, then the largest y value I have is log base c of 2. So what will come out will be log base c of 2 to infinity, and that's going to be the range of f of h of x. It's going to be -2 to infinity. So that's question 6.